agenda is, as we promised you, is our PTK Financial Aid Review. And as we mentioned, we have two guest speakers here. Maribel and Trish, go ahead and take it away. Just when you want to go to the next slide, just tell me next slide, please.
Okay. Next slide. So today I'm going to go over some important key points of financial aid. As I mentioned before, I've been working there about 12 years. So there's certain things that I consistently see year after year where students may have issues with the FAFSA. Okay. So this is the agenda that we'll be going through today. So let's start off with creating your FSA ID. Next slide, please. So the FSA ID is needed to complete your FAFSA. Honestly, it's probably one of the things that I see students in person struggle with the most. So when you do create your ID, you want to make sure that you write down your information in a safe spot. Your username, your password, because if you lose it, it becomes such a pain to get it back. But let's see, let me go here. So I'm sorry, guys, I'm nervous. So this is, I included the link here where you go to complete the FSA ID. And also one thing I did want to touch on is that once your information is verified through your Social Security, it takes about 1 to 3 days. So I would recommend doing this prior to actually sitting down to do your FAFSA. I would definitely go out there and create this first. And that FSA ID also, you'll need it to complete your master promissory note and your entrance counseling if you are planning on taking loans. Next slide. Okay, so gathering the information for your FAFSA, these are important things that you want to make sure that you have with you when you sit down to complete your FAFSA. If you're a dependent student, you will have to provide your parents' information. So it would be a good thing to sit down with your parents to complete it, because they also have to create an FSA ID as well, because they will use that as their signature to sign off on their child's FAFSA. But these are some of the things you need. Social Security, make sure you have your parents' information. As I mentioned, your ID, if you have one, and your tax information as well. It also helps if you have your taxes ready, available to you, so that you can fill out the application. You can use the data retrieval tool, which is in the FAFSA, but I have heard from some students that it doesn't work for them. And I don't know if it's because they're not inputting their information correctly that the IRS is not allowing them to. But just from my personal experience, I've used the data retrieval tool in the FAFSA, and it's really helpful because it just downloads your tax information onto your FAFSA, and you don't have to go and fill each box out step by step. And then I included a link here for where to apply for the FAFSA. You want to be careful, because I've had some students tell me that that they were being charged, or that someone was trying to charge them. So you want to make sure that you're going to the correct website, that is the studentaid.gov, because, and I've found when you look FAFSA up, if you scroll down, you see a lot of things that kind of look legit, but it's not from the Department of Ed. So definitely go to the Department of Ed to complete that application. Next. Okay, so now we're going to talk about independent versus dependent. An independent student will have to fill out their FAFSA for themselves and their spouse. So if you're married at the time that you complete your FAFSA, even though you and your spouse didn't file taxes, say the prior year together because you guys weren't married, you still have to include your spouse's taxes as of the date that you're completing the FAFSA, whatever your marital status is at that point, then that's what you want to include.
And
Sorry.
what is the independent status versus, or Trish or Maribel? Isn't it go by age, or how does that work?
It does. The dependent is a student who is under 24, is not married, is not a veteran, was not a ward of the court, or does not have a child. So that's where sometimes students get a little upset because, you know, they're in their 20s, early 20s, and they're not living at home with mom and dad. You know, they're completely taking care of themselves. And when they go to fill out the application, they realize that they need their parents' information. Per the Department of Ed, they're still considered dependent students if they're under 24 and they don't meet any of those things that I mentioned earlier, with having a child, being married, or being a veteran. Trish, am I missing anything?
No, I think you covered them, or they couldn't, homelessness too.
Homelessness, yes. Thank you. Next slide. So after you complete your FAFSA, you definitely want to make sure that you stay, depending on what school you go to, you definitely always want to check your student center or student portals, because it's important that you go in there to see when the school gets your FAFSA, you're given a to-do list, and that sometimes will delay a student if they don't stay actively checking their student centers. They won't know that those documents are sitting there waiting for them to complete, and they're wondering, well, why haven't I gotten my financial aid? And it's usually because they have items that are incomplete, or that they have not submitted that they don't know about because they haven't checked that student center. So it's really important that once you do the FAFSA, I've rarely heard of schools calling students to say, hey, we got your FAFSA, this is what you need to do. I know that there are some, you know, for-profit schools that do that, but it's important as a student to take control of that, you know, and to be in charge of, you know, getting those things done, because the sooner you get them done, the faster you will have your aid, and then you will be able to start the day you plan on starting, and not having to set up a last minute payment plan to be able to start classes. Next slide. So these are the types of financial aid that are offered. We do offer Pell Grants. And those don't have to be repaid unless you withdraw from a class. Then it's kind of, but you know, it's rare that you have to pay the Pell Grant back. But and there is a limit. That's also important for you guys to know, that there is a limit on Pell Grant. It's not like before where you could get Pell Grant as long as you had the need and you qualified for it. The federal government has put a cap on it. It is 600% eligibility. There's also SEOG grants. And we also offer the Arizona Assistance Partnership. So those are the different types of grants. Next slide. So these are the loans. These are the fun loans that everybody loves. Just kidding. Yeah, 600%. So we have direct subsidized loans. Those students who qualify have to have financial need. And the maximum amount that you could borrow is $23,000. And then we have, in this one, and this one's really important also to pay attention when you do borrow loans, pay attention to which loan is which, because the subsidized loan, you don't pay the interest while you're in school at least half time and during your grace period. So that's important to know when you are going to borrow, to take that into consideration, because that interest accrues real quick. And so then we'll go on to the next loan, the unsubsidized loan. That one, you don't need to demonstrate financial need. You can get that loan. However, there is also a maximum amount that you can borrow on that one. And this one, the interest does accrue as soon as it goes out. I believe it's at 10 days. 10 days after it goes out. Trish, do you remember? Yeah. So it accrues right away. Mm-hmm. I did want to say something to John. If you do take a loan, don't feel that you need to take the full amount that the school is offering you. You can always change that amount. So if you say, okay, well, I don't need the whole $1750 because I have Pell or your classes aren't that much, you could always change that amount before accepting it and making it what you want it to be. So don't feel that you need to take what you're being offered. You can always make that amount less.
College or career school is an important step in achieving your future goals, and there are many financial aid options to consider. Did you know that a federal student loan can be a great way to help pay for school? After all, a grant, work-study job, or a scholarship can be a huge help, but these forms of aid may not cover the full cost of attending school. So if you decide to take out a federal student loan, it's important to understand what you are getting and be a responsible borrower. Getting a loan is a big decision. You might be paying your loans back for 10 years or more, so take your time to decide. And remember to accept only the loans that you need, because you'll have to repay them once you're out of school. Here are a few things to keep in mind when deciding how much to borrow. Do some research. Make sure that your school is the right fit for you, both educationally and financially. Location, location, location. The amount of money you need to borrow can depend a lot on where your school is located. In-state schools and community colleges may cost less than out-of-state schools. And finally, getting an idea of your future income is also important when deciding how much to borrow. Starting salaries vary greatly depending on your career path, so it's worth thinking about how the amount of your loan will affect your future finances. After all, your student loan payments should be only a small percentage of your salary after you graduate. Once you've decided on your school and figured out how much money you should borrow, you'll need to sign a promissory note, which is an agreement to repay your loan. Make sure you keep a copy for your records. If you do take out loans, you'll need to keep in touch with your loan servicer when repayment begins. Your loan servicer will make this easy for you by offering web, email, and phone contact options. If you make this investment in your future, being an informed, responsible borrower can pay off in a big way. If you have questions or need more information, please visit studentaid.gov.
I like
That video really said everything. That's a really good video. And that's why I wanted to include it, because it gave a lot of really important and good information. So after you've been awarded and now you're going to school, you have to maintain your eligibility in order to continue to be eligible for financial aid. So you have to maintain your grade point average and your pace of progression. And I'll be honest, this is what I see get students, especially when they're first starting college. They'll take a lot of, just kind of fun classes and things like that. And they'll, drop them and not pack, they'll drop them. And then they don't realize that that's going to affect them down the line on their pace of progression, because you do have to meet the 66% of the classes that you're taking. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're thinking about enrolling in classes. Think really how much can you handle, and what you know you could handle, because I think that's what gets a lot of students sometimes, is that they think they could handle 12 credits, and then, you know, and then they're not eligible for the financial aid. And I put a link to the video. We have a video on our website at riosalado.edu and the financial aid under the satisfactory academic progress. But whenever you guys get a chance, if you guys want to see the video.
3 criteria.
Okay. Now it's coming. I hear it.
Apply for financial aid. Woohoo! Now, to keep your financial aid, you need to do one very important thing. You must meet satisfactory academic progress, or SAP. Satisfactory academic progress is measured on 3 criteria: progress, grade point, and maximum time frame. To meet progress, you must successfully complete 2/3, that's 66.67% of your attempted credit hours. So, if your program's credit hours are these pancakes, you must eat 2/3 of them to meet SAP requirements. Note that syrup is optional. Your grade point average is calculated based on a sliding scale, depending on the number of credits you take. You can get a 4.0 grade point average, a 3.0, and even a 2.0. But anything below a 2.0 could mean no cash, depending on your total attempted credits. Finally, to meet maximum time frame, you must declare a major and finish that program within 150% of the allotted time. What does this mean? Let's say your program of study is pancake making, and that a pancake making degree requires 60 credit hours to complete. You must finish your pancake making degree within 90 credit hours. If you fail to meet these requirements, you will receive a notification that you have not met SAP and will lose your financial aid eligibility. If you find yourself in this situation, there is an appeals process. However, the best course of action is not to get SAP'd in the first place, unless of course you want some on your pancakes. To learn more about SAP, the appeals process, and financial aid eligibility, visit riosalado.edu/FA.
Makes sense now that I think 150% of the requirement. That was one question.
Mm-hmm.
One of you two also touched earlier. A few people had questions about the 600. I think it was 600% issue
For the Pell.
Yeah, that was it. The Pell Grant. Yeah, 600. What explain that a little bit?
Trish, do you want to?
Okay. The 600% is equal to 6 years of undergraduate studies at full-time each term. So if you were not full-time in each term, it would take you a little bit longer than 6 years to get to your 600%. But that's, they changed that quite a few years ago, where they put a limit on it.
Like about 8 years, I want to
Mhm.
say, maybe
Yeah.
about 8 years.
Because I've seen students that have that are still attending, and you review their account and they're at like 1,000-something% because they were the students that were before the cutoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw one of the questions said, when do we recommend that students complete their FAFSA? Is that correct? So we recommend that you do it as soon as it becomes available. It's always best to do it as soon, as sooner than later. So you could, the new FAFSA came out, today? So I would always recommend doing it as soon as you can. And the benefit too is that if you are one of the first students that get awarded, if grants are available, if you qualify, it's usually kind of first come, first serve. So that also helps too.
I see that Michael has a couple questions. Do you see Michael's question in the chat there, Michael
Yeah.
Roy? There
is just one FAFSA form, but it's going on for 2 years. So right now we're in the 2021 year, and then the 21-22 year, which is fall next year, fall 2021. That FAFSA came out today, and that's using your 2019 taxes to complete that. And like Maribel said, as soon as they come out and you can complete them, our biggest thing is, yes, get them done, because it's a first come, first serve on some of those scholarships and some of those grants that are automatically awarded through the system. So if you don't have a FAFSA in and they start awarding, you're going to be out. And there's, once it's gone, it takes just one overnight run and that money is spent. So it's best to get it in so you're in that first pool of people that are going to be awarded.
Also, he asked, can you have financial aid and scholarships? I think he meant merit-based scholarships at your college at the same time. And I know the answer is yes, but do you two, either of you care to elaborate on that at all?
What was your question, John?
Well, Michael asked, can you have financial aid and scholarships at your college at the same time?
Yes, you can have financial aid at one college. You can have, when I say financial aid, I'm grants and loans at one college in a term. You can't overlap that. You can have scholarships and financial aid at one college, and you can have a scholarship at another college, paying for that if you're doing like a consortium or some type of thing like that. So scholarships are a different rule. They're not federal regulated, so we can do different things with that. But the student loans and the Pell, you can only get that at one college, one term.
And I think it's important, and correct me if I'm wrong, but students, financial aid is typically considered need-based, I believe, whereas scholarships, not always, but oftentimes are merit-based. Am I correct about that?
Yes, there is some scholarships that are need-based, and if you've been awarded Pell and you get a need-based scholarship, and you have an award for a loan or something, it could decrease your loans based on your federal need. But there's not a lot of them like that. Scholarships generally just come in and can post to a student's account and they get the benefit of it.
Good. Okay, thank you. And then Skay said, if she's a junior, should she do it now? No, you should not, Skay. And I think I'm correct about this, because you have to fill out the FAFSA every year. You go to college if you want aid. Is that correct?
Yes, so you're a junior, so you'll want to, a year from now, you will want to do your 22-23. Wow, FAFSA, 22-23, FAFSA, yes. And
So
that'll
you
make
want
you.
to do it now, Skay.
Trish or Maraver, can you type a real code for everyone in the chat box, please?
Oh, thank you.
You can search by name too when you're in the FAFSA. It's pretty easy to find it.
Any helpful, one thing that came up to me as you were talking, Maribel, is it's easy for us to do taxes and then put them aside and disregard, not throw them away, but thinking, oh, we don't have to worry about them anymore. But what's a helpful hint in terms of, because we can't lose track of our taxes because we're going to need them for financial aid.
Definitely. What I do is I save a copy of my taxes because I have 2 daughters in college. So I save a copy of my taxes to like a thumb drive, and I just save them there because when you're filling out the FAFSA, you want to make sure that you're, putting the correct information. And I just, once something's out of sight, I have no clue where it is. So that's why I have to keep them somewhere where I know where it's at in my little folder that I keep all my important papers. But yeah, making a copy, saving it to your computer. I use H&R, and whenever I want to go in and see like a previous year, I'll log into my H&R and they will have copies there that I can use.